I know that during this holiday season, it can sometimes feel overwhelming and hard to stay intentional and to prioritize maybe your family or the celebration of the season of Jesus's birth as a priority. Here are 3 ways that you can be intentional during this holiday season to prioritize your family and be intentional with one another. Number 1 is travel. Travel can feel like a lot on someone's plate, especially I'm sure once people have children and you're trying to make it everywhere all at once. When you are traveling, I would be intentional with some guidelines that you can place on yourself so that way you are being intentional even with the time spent with your own little family during travel time. Growing up, I remember many different times where we were in the car as a family. That time together that we had in the car was just as fun as the vacations or the trips that we were going on. And so during traveling time, a lot of people, and obviously I'm not going to judge for this because I don't have children yet of my own, except for the baby in my stomach right now, so he doesn't move or cry or anything around much. But I do know that the fact that our parents had certain times where we did on long car rides watch videos or a movie or something in order to keep us occupied. However, there were also times during travel where we were not allowed to look at our screens, where especially if we were traveling like an hour or less, or maybe even an hour and a half or less, we usually weren't even allowed to have screens on during that time. We just had that time as family time, as time that we could talk with our siblings or look out the window or play a game together. And traveling time can be such a great way that you continue to build the bond for your family and just being intentional to have the joy of the season. Now, I know for some people there can be arguing and there can be disagreements and then there's no peace, and so that is why they use screen time in order to facilitate better travel. But I would encourage you, I know that for myself growing up, even arguments or even disagreements or minor inconveniences and annoyances in the family, getting to learn how to work through arguments and having that process displayed for us, even in the car, was very important to learning how to work through arguments in real life. And I know that that's not necessarily maybe the most fun or unchaotic item that you could do in that time. But if your goal is to be intentional with your family, having travel time as a way that you can still connect with one another can be very valuable. Tip number 2 for building intentionality with your family is to prioritize events that have family rather than friends. Now, for a lot of people, especially perhaps if you have a disagreeable family or if you're not as close with your family as maybe some people are, it can be very easy to fall into the trap of prioritizing your friends and relationships that you've built yourself over your family and over the people who really are most important to you. A good reminder for this is to remember that in most cases, in a Christian home, God gave us the family that He gave us for a reason. We may not always be able to live with one another or grow together as beautifully and as perfectly as we maybe should, but that doesn't change the fact that family is the only constant. Your friends, yes, you may have fantastic friends that truly care for you and are able to support you and guide you, but during these times of the holidays, it is your family that is going to be sticking by you, and hopefully that character trait is instilled in your children and in your siblings and in your parents so that way you all can be on the same page together. But even if it's not, remembering that your family was given to you for a purpose. God gave you the family that He gave you, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your siblings. God gave them to you, And if nothing else, you can use this time intentionally to be a blessing. Encourage in perhaps your children or just yourself and your spouse that this is a time of holiday season when you can be a blessing to others, when we can give to others, and not just make it about what am I getting from it? Am I being with my best friends? Am I spending time with the people that I enjoy being around the most? Or am I truly, genuinely trying to bless others in this experience and give towards others? Give as Christ has given to me. Being intentional with putting your family first and choosing perhaps to prioritize those family events rather than friend events could help you keep down the chaos of the season. If there's way too many Christmas parties or way too many things that you're invited to, cutting out those items with friends and just focusing intentionally on the family gatherings can help you get into a better mindset and a better mind space to be more peaceful during those conversations and to live in give towards your family in those circumstances. The third tip I have for you to create intentional memories with your families during this holiday season, Christmas and New Year's, set aside time to spend intentionally growing in your relationship with your family. So for some families, this may look like games that they all collaborate and play together. For some families, maybe this has to be structured conversation time. Some families struggle more with having those conversations. People are on their phones. Being intentional to set the example, put your phone away. Put your kids' devices away if they have devices. Your husband, make sure he's, or your wife, depending, your spouse, make sure they're on the same page as you, that when we are spending intentional family time together, we are trying to avoid the use of technology, we're trying to avoid the use of distractions, and maybe, the TV is on with a football game or something. That, for some families, is the way that they can then bond and have communication together, but try to set the example in that. I would even say go so far as to ask other members of the family if they could put away their devices as well, so that way they can focus on intentional family time as well. Once again, use that to your discretion with your personal family. On one side of the family, we will be sure to tell someone if they are looking at their screen too much, and we'll be like, hey, you need to get off this, and we are spending time with family right now. And that's totally fine. That's how the family is structured. Everyone knows that you could get told that at any point in time. So in general, we don't have a ton of issues with people being on their devices as much. On another side of the family, that maybe isn't conveyed as much. There's not as much directness in that. And to say something so boldly would be more offensive, would be taken more offensively. And so on that side, there is more grace and maybe just leading by example and showing that, nope, we're putting our phones away. If you're not going to do that, you can stay in this room. I'll go in this other room. We'll be talking with everyone else in there. And if you would like to join us, we would love to have you there. But you don't necessarily need to say that. Maybe that's just by your actions of putting your phone in the other room or in the place where you just come in, keeping it in your coat whenever you leave your coat somewhere. It can look a little bit different depending on your family structure and what you feel would be offensive or not offensive to certain people. But use your own discretion in doing this. However, I think there is a great benefit that comes, and you can be so much more intentional when you set aside some time, especially if you are maybe the one hosting Christmas. You can then maybe ask everyone to please put their phones away if they're at your house or something like that, in order to establish some of that more intentional time that you can have together for the holidays, rather than just a generic family gathering where everyone is looking at their phones. I hope that these 3 tips help you. Once again, remember that every family is going to be different. Adjust maybe your expectations accordingly, depending on how you and your family is. But I believe that there are many ways that you can create intentional time and just create happy and wonderful memories, even in the midst of maybe some tension, even in the midst of argument, and maybe even in the midst of disagreement. Family is something that is so important and something that should be so treasured. And during this season, do your best to make it a priority to go right ahead and put that as a priority. Thanks so much for watching. I am talking about building an intentional life on this channel, especially in the matters of faith, finances, wifehood, and pregnancy. So if that is something that interests you, if you could subscribe, that would be great. If you like the content of this video, go ahead and leave a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much.